She found him the way you find things you were never supposed to find. Not with noise. Not with a warning. Just there. In the dark. In her yard. In the one place that was supposed to be hers alone. Esther stood at the gate for a moment that stretched longer than it should have, one hand still on the cold metal latch, and looked at the man on the ground the way you look at something your brain has not quite caught up with yet. He was on his side, one arm folded under him, the other hand pressed flat and hard against his stomach. His suit was dark and it had been expensive once. She could tell by the way it sat on his shoulders even now, even ruined and soaked through and pressed into the dirt like he had fallen and not had the energy to fall gracefully. His eyes were open. Barely. They found her face in the dark and stayed there. She should have gone back inside. She knew that with the part of her brain that had been keeping her alive and out of trouble for 26 years. She was good at knowing what she should do. She was good at doing it too most of the time. Most of the time. She went to him instead. She didn't run. She walked, careful, controlled, the way she moved through the diner on a packed Saturday when 3 tables needed her at once and she had 2 hands and 1 set of feet, and she had learned a long time ago that panic didn't get the food out any faster and it didn't make anything better, it just made you look like you were losing. She crossed the wet grass and dropped to her knees beside him and didn't say a word. She moved his hand first. Just lifted it, gently but without hesitation, and looked at what was underneath. The wound was bad. Not as bad as it could have been, but bad enough. Something had gone in at the left side of his torso, below the ribs. The bleeding had slowed but it hadn't stopped, and the area around it was dark and swollen in a way that told her this had happened a while ago and he had been pressing on it and moving anyway, and that was not a good combination. She pressed his hand back over it. Art. He made a sound, low and controlled, the kind of sound a person makes when they are trying very hard not to make any sound at all, and she said, quiet and even, keep the pressure on, the way she said things at the diner when she meant them and not a syllable more, and he did. She got him inside in stages. He was heavier than he looked, which was not surprising because he was solid across the shoulders and he had nothing left to give her and she was doing most of the work. She got his arm over her shoulder and she stood up slowly and he moved with her. Unsteady, barely, each step costing him something she could feel through the arm she had around his back, and they made it across the yard and through the back door and into the kitchen. She got him onto the floor because the floor was the easiest thing right now, and asking him to climb stairs or navigate to the couch in the dark was not a problem she wanted to solve tonight. She pulled the first aid kit from under the sink. It was a real kit, not the kind of kit you buy at the drugstore with 2 band-aids and an alcohol wipe and a pamphlet about when to call a doctor. She had built it herself over the years, replacing things when she used them, adding things she thought she might need, because she was the kind of person who expected things to go wrong and tried to be ready for them. It had served her for a broken nose after a fall in the winter, a burn from the diner's grill that had blistered badly, her cousin Marcus's hand after a car door caught his fingers wrong. It would serve her now. She worked quickly. She cut his shirt open at the side. She didn't ask, she just did it, there was no time for asking. And she cleaned the wound with what she had and she packed it tight and she wrapped it and tied it off with the kind of pressure that held. The whole time she felt his eyes on her. Not watching the way a scared person watches, darting around the room and back to her face and around again. Watching the way someone watches when they are trying to understand something they haven't seen before. Patient. Focused. Like she was a problem worth solving. She tied off the bandage and sat back on her heels and looked at her work. You need a hospital, she said. No, he said. His voice was quiet and the pain was in it, but the certainty was in it too, underneath the pain, and she could tell this was not a decision he was making right now. It was a decision that had already been made. She looked at him. He looked back. His face was hard to read, not because he was hiding something in the way people hide things when they're afraid or ashamed, but because he seemed to have had years of practice keeping it very still. Like a surface that reflects without giving anything away. Then you need to stay still and not bleed on anything else, she said. Something moved behind his eyes. It was not quite a surprise. It was close to surprise, the way something is close to a thing without being the thing itself. She got up and washed her hands at the sink, taking longer than she needed to, and she looked at the window above the faucet and the dark rectangle it showed her of her own backyard, and she breathed through her nose once, slowly, and she did not think about what she had just done or why she had done it because there was nothing to be gained from that right now. She dried her hands and turned around. Can you walk? She said. Yes, he said. He could barely. She helped anyway. If this story has you hooked, don't forget to like and subscribe. She put him in the back room. It wasn't really a room. It was a space, a converted storage area with a small window too high to see out of and a cot she had bought 3 years ago when her cousin Marcus needed somewhere to stay for a month and she had never taken apart because it felt wasteful. The room smelled like cedar and old cardboard. She brought a blanket from the hall closet. She brought water in a glass, not a plastic cup, and she didn't examine why she reached for the glass instead of the cup because it was late and she was tired and some things didn't need to be examined. She set the glass on the floor beside the cot and did not look at him when she did it. He did not thank her. She did not expect him to. The first 2 days were quiet in a way that had actual weight to it, like the air in the apartment had gotten a little thicker and they were both moving through it carefully. She went to work. She came home. She checked the bandage each evening. She had to. It wasn't sentiment, it was sense. An infected wound would become a much larger problem than the one she already had, and she changed it and she didn't ask questions and he didn't offer anything. They moved around the apartment like two people who had agreed, without words, that the space was large enough for both of them if they were careful about it. She had the kitchen. He had the back room. The hallway was neutral. They passed each other in it once on the second morning, both heading in opposite directions, and she nodded once and he did the same and that was the whole of it. She learned his sleep schedule by accident. He was awake when she left at 6 in the morning. She could tell by the quality of the silence from behind his door, the kind of silence that is a person choosing not to move rather than the heavier silence of someone actually under. He was still awake when she got back in the afternoon. She didn't know if he slept at all or when or how. She didn't ask. On the third evening, she was in the kitchen reheating rice and not thinking about anything in particular, or trying not to, and she heard him shift on the cot and then his voice came through the wall, low and even and unexpected. "The painting is crooked," he said. She stopped stirring. The painting he meant was the small framed print in the hallway. Sunflowers, yellow and a little faded, in a cheap black frame she had bought at a thrift store when she moved in because she had wanted something on the wall and she had $5 to spend and this was what $5 bought. It had been crooked since she hung it. She had been meaning to straighten it for 3 years. At some point she had stopped seeing it entirely. She stood in the kitchen and looked at the wall in front of her and said nothing for a moment. Then she said, "I know." A silence. "Why don't you fix it?" She thought about it. "Because if I fix it I'll have to actually look at it. And then I'll realize I don't like it. Then take it down. I don't have anything to put in its place. A straight wall is worse than a crooked painting." He was quiet for a moment. She thought he was done. "Is it?" he said. She didn't have an answer for that. She went back to stirring her rice. When she came around the corner 10 minutes later with her bowl, she looked at the hallway without meaning to. The painting was still crooked. Of course it was. But she had looked at it, and she noticed now that the sunflowers were a little faded and the frame was a little cheap and she had spent 3 years walking past it without seeing either of those things. She sat at the kitchen table and she was very careful, for a long time, not to smile. She found out on Thursday. She wasn't looking for anything. She was on her break in the back booth with her phone, doing what she usually did on her breaks, which was trying to rest her feet without having to think. She was scrolling through the local news the way you scroll when you don't really want to read anything, you just want the feeling of motion. And she saw a name. And then a face. The article was 3 months old. It was about a dispute between two Korean business families. That was the word the article used, families, like they were talking about people who owned competing hardware stores. There was a photograph embedded halfway down. A surveillance image, dim and grainy, the kind of image that shows you a person without really showing you a person. The angle was bad. But she had spent 4 days in close quarters with that face and she knew the set of that jaw and she knew the stillness. She read the article twice. Then she put her phone face down on the table and looked at the wall of the diner for a while, at the faded photos of the neighborhood that had been hanging there since before she was hired and probably since before she was born. His name was King. She hadn't known that. She had been thinking of him, in the private shorthand of her own head, as the man in the back room, which was easier and involved less committing to any particular idea about who he was. She went back to work. She finished the shift. She walked home. She went straight to the back room. She pushed the door open without knocking, which she had not done before. He was sitting up on the cot, back against the wall, a book open across his knee. He looked at her without alarm, which told her his kind of life had prepared him for people entering rooms he was in without warning. He didn't say anything. He just looked. "Your name is King," she said. He held her gaze. "Yes. I know what you are." Pause. Long enough to be a breath. "What am I?" She told him what the article had said. She kept her voice level, the way she kept it level with difficult customers. Not cold, just even, like she was reading information rather than delivering it. She told him what she had figured out from reading between the lines of the article and from the 4 weeks of evidence that had accumulated in her own apartment. She told him she understood now why he couldn't go to a hospital. Why no one had come looking for him. Why he had climbed a fence and collapsed in someone's backyard instead of making a call. He listened without moving. When she finished, he said, "Yes." Just that. Yes. Like she had described something accurate and he was confirming it the way you confirm a fact. She stood in the doorway and looked at him and thought about the glass of water, the blanket, the 12 evenings of changing bandages, the conversation about the crooked painting that she had not stopped thinking about, for reasons she had not fully examined. "I could still call someone," she said. "You could," he said. Neither of them moved. "I'm not going to," she said. She didn't entirely know why she told him that. She just wanted it to be a thing that existed in the air between them rather than a thing that only existed in her head. "I know," he said. Not smug. Not relieved. Just quiet and certain, like he had known before she said it, and the saying of it was just a formality she was giving herself. She looked at him for a moment longer. "You stay in this room until you can walk the hallway without slowing down. You don't make calls from inside this apartment. You don't answer the door if I'm not here. You don't go near the front windows." She paused and made sure he was still meeting her eyes. "My apartment. My rules. Are we clear?" He looked at her for a long moment, and she had the feeling she sometimes had with certain customers, the ones who came in already decided about something, where the looking was not a hesitation but an assessment. "Yes," he said. She pulled the door shut behind her. She stood in the hallway for a few seconds with her back against the wall, looking at the crooked painting. Then she pushed off and went to make dinner. Days had a shape after that. A rhythm she hadn't planned. She woke at 5:30. She made coffee, strong the way she liked it, dark enough that people who came to her apartment for the first time always flinched a little. On the second morning, without deciding to, she poured a second cup and set it outside his door before she left. She didn't knock. She just set it down and went. She told herself it was because she had made too much and it would go to waste, which was partially true. The cup was always empty when she got home. On the fourth morning, she made the coffee the same way. On the fifth morning, she thought about making it a little weaker and then didn't, and was briefly annoyed at herself for the thought and the not doing of it both. He started leaving his door open a crack during the day. Not wide. Just enough to let the air move through and to change the quality of the quiet in the apartment from closed off to something more like shared. She noticed. She didn't say anything. He was quiet in a way that had changed from the first few days. The early quiet was two strangers keeping a careful distance. This quiet had room in it. It was the kind of quiet that two people fall into when they have stopped needing to perform the act of not noticing each other. He read a lot. She had a small shelf in the hallway, 8 or 9 books, a mix of things she had read and things she had meant to read, and the Lighthouse novel she had bought at the used bookstore on Clement Street 2 winters ago because the cover looked interesting and then never opened. On the 6th day, one of the books she hadn't read was gone from the shelf. On the 8th day, it was back. On the 9th day, a different one was gone. She didn't say anything. On the 10th evening, she was in the kitchen making a sandwich, and his voice came from the direction of the back room. "The one about the lighthouse," he said. "It's better than the cover suggests." "I've had it for 2 years," she said. "I know. Start it." She didn't. But she moved it from the shelf to the kitchen table, where it sat beside the salt shaker for the next 3 days looking at her. He was walking properly by day 8, or close enough to properly that she stopped listening for the small pause in his step that told her it was still costing him. She could hear him in the evenings, pacing the length of the back room with the focused patience of someone who needed to be moving and was limiting himself to the space he had. On the 11th day, she came home from the afternoon shift and found him in the kitchen. He was standing at the counter with a glass of water, looking out the small window above the sink. He was still, the way he was always still, but there was something different in it. Not the stillness of a man braced for something. Something closer to rest. She stopped in the kitchen doorway. "I made rice," he said without turning around. "I used your pot. I didn't think you would mind." She looked at the stove. There was rice in the pot, the lid resting slightly off-center the way she always left it. It smelled like ginger and something else she couldn't name. "Sit down before you fall down," she said. He sat. She served them both and sat across from him. They ate in the quiet that had become theirs over the past week and a half, the quiet that didn't need to be filled, and at some point in the middle of it Esther realized she had stopped thinking of him as dangerous and started thinking of him as something she didn't have a clean word for yet. Not safe. Not exactly. But present in a way that she had stopped bracing against. She didn't look for the word. She ate her rice and let the quiet sit. He came to her on a Wednesday evening and told her he needed to go out. She was at the kitchen table with her laundry, folding things into piles, and she looked up when he said it, and she kept her face the way she kept it at work when someone said something she wasn't going to react to yet. "Where?" she said. "Behind the diner. The alley." He paused. Someone needs to see me. Someone from your world. Yes. She picked up a shirt and folded it in thirds. How long? An hour. Less. She put the shirt on the pile. She thought about saying the things she could say, that it was too soon, that he wasn't well enough, that she didn't know what he was walking into out there, and neither did he, not really. She thought about all of it and she put it down. Be careful, she said. The words came out before she had decided on them. He looked at her. I'm always careful. You were found bleeding in a backyard in someone else's neighborhood. That's not the resume of a careful man. Pause. Something that was not quite a smile moved at the corner of his mouth, or maybe she imagined it. That was someone else's failure. Not mine. He went. She folded the rest of the laundry and put it away and made herself a cup of tea and sat with it and didn't think too hard about anything. She found out 2 days later that she had seen it without knowing she had seen it. She was covering a lunch shift, moving fast between the kitchen and the floor, and she cut through the prep area to grab an order, and she glanced through the small window above the prep counter. A window she had looked through 1,000 times without seeing anything interesting, and she saw 2 figures in the alley. One with his back to her, one facing the building. She saw the stillness of the one facing the building. The way he stood. She picked up the order and went back to the floor. When she got home that evening, King was in the back room with the door open the usual crack. She passed in the hallway and he said, without looking up from the book, "How was the shift?" It was the question he had started asking about 10 days ago. Quiet, offhand, easy. Fine, she said. She went to her room. She sat on the edge of her bed in her uniform and she held the information of what she had seen in the alley the way you hold something fragile, feeling for the weight of it. She had seen him meet someone. She had not told him she had seen it. He had not told her about the meeting. They were both, she realized, keeping the same amount of the truth from each other. She didn't know if that was something or nothing. She changed her clothes and went back to the kitchen to start dinner. The back room door was still open. The quiet in the apartment was the same quiet as before, and also it wasn't, and she thought they both knew it. He changed after that. Not sharply. Just by degrees, the way the light changes in the late afternoon without you noticing until the room is different than it was. He closed his door more. Not all the way but more than before. He stopped asking about her shifts. He was up earlier in the mornings, and once, coming downstairs at 5:40, she found the coffee already made and his door already pulled shut, and the apartment felt like it had before he started leaving it open, and she didn't like that, and she noticed that she didn't like it. She didn't ask him about it. She made her cup and left and went to work. The feeling started the second week of November. She couldn't name it and she couldn't locate it, which was the thing about that kind of feeling. It didn't come with a reason, it just arrived and sat in the back of your neck and made you look over your shoulder when there was nothing behind you. She noticed a car parked at the end of her block 2 mornings in a row. Different cars or the same one, she couldn't tell. She noticed a man on the corner who seemed to be standing rather than going somewhere. She told herself she was being careful. She told herself being careful was not the same as afraid. She was a little afraid. King went quieter still. Not the pulling back quiet of the past week. Something harder than that, a focused quiet, the kind that had an object. She could feel him thinking from across the apartment, which was not something she had expected to be able to feel, but she could. She came home on a Tuesday to find him in the kitchen, standing at the counter, and he looked at her when she came through the door the way you look at something you have been calculating how to handle. Like the answer is almost there but not quite. What? She said. Nothing, he said. She put her bag down. She got a glass of water. She sat at the table and looked at her hands around the glass, and she thought about pushing and thought about not pushing and decided not pushing was still the right call, even though it cost her more now than it had a few weeks ago. She waited. He didn't give her anything. He went back to the room and the door clicked shut and the apartment went quiet again, and she sat with her water and the particular weight of something being wrong that you don't have the information to fix yet. She heard it at 11 o'clock on a Friday night. She couldn't sleep. This had been happening more lately. She would go to bed tired enough that she should drop off immediately, and instead she would lie there in the dark with the ceiling and her thoughts for company. She came downstairs for water. She wasn't trying to listen. His door was not quite closed all the way, just resting against the frame with a crack of light along one side, and she heard his voice, low, careful, switching between Korean and English the way he did sometimes when he was being precise about something. She heard a name. And then she heard hers. She stood very still in the hallway with one hand on the wall and she listened. She did not want to. She did it anyway because some information is too important not to have, even if having of it costs you something. She heard enough. She didn't hear every word, but she heard the shape of it, the architecture, the way you hear a piece of music through a wall and you know what it is even without every note. He was going to handle it. The faction, the people who had been watching her block, the people who had put him on her lawn in the first place. He was going to handle it the way a man like him handled things, quietly and completely and without discussing it with anyone, and she was supposed to wake up one morning and find the problem simply gone. Solved. By him. Without her. She stood there until she was sure she understood what she had heard. Then she pushed his door open. He was sitting on the edge of the cot, phone in hand, looking up at her with the expression of someone who had understood, in the half-second before she opened the door, what was about to happen. He ended the call. She didn't yell. She had never been a yeller, not since she was small. She stood in the doorway and she crossed her arms and she looked at him with the level, specific look she had perfected over years of people assuming she would let things go if they waited long enough. "Don't," she said. "Esther. Don't." She stepped into the room. "You were going to handle it. The threat. The people watching my street. You were going to make it go away the way you make things go away, and you weren't going to tell me, and I was supposed to just wake up one day and find everything fine and not ask how." He was very still. "I didn't bring you inside so you could manage me," she said. "I made a choice. I want the right to keep making choices. That's not a lot to ask. I'm trying to keep you safe. I know that." Her voice was steady, which was costing her. "And I know how you're planning to do it. And I know that when it's done it doesn't stop. There's someone connected to the someone you just handled, and then someone connected to that someone, and you do the same thing again and again, and I'm on the list of reasons why forever, and you do all of it without telling me because you've decided that silence is the same as protection." "It is protection. It's control," she said. "I know the difference. They look the same from the outside. They don't feel the same from the inside." Something moved across his face. Not anger. Not the practiced stillness he used when he wanted to give nothing away. Something else, something that looked like a man hearing something true said plainly, without agenda for the first time in a very long while. She looked at him in the room she had given him, in the apartment she had carried him into, in the life that had been hers and only hers until 4 weeks ago. "I didn't keep you alive," she said, quieter now, "so you could go back to being exactly what put you on my lawn." She left. She pulled the door closed behind her and went to her room and sat on the edge of her bed in the dark with her hands pressed flat on her knees. She didn't know if it would change anything. She had learned not to build structures on the expectation that saying true things would fix anything. But she had said it. It was true. It was out there now, in the air of the apartment, sitting in the space between them. That had to be worth something. He was in the kitchen in the morning. She almost walked past him. She had her bag and her keys, and the first shift at 6:30 was not going to wait for her, and she had her eyes on the door and her mind already at the diner, and he said, quietly but clearly, "Sit down." She sat down. He talked for a long time. He told her things he had not told anyone. Not because no one had ever asked, but because the kind of people who asked were the kind of people who could use what they knew, and so the not telling had become a habit so old it felt like a rule. He told her about the faction. Their names. What they wanted. What they had been trying to take from him and why his refusal had led to the restaurant and the alley and eventually her backyard. He told her what it would cost him to give them enough to make them stop. Not blood. Something more expensive than blood, to him, leverage he had built over a decade. A position in a network he would have to step away from. A reputation for being untouchable was, he said, not really a reputation anymore once you had stepped away from the thing that made it true. He told her that he had been in her back room for almost 4 weeks and had read 9 of her books and had learned the particular sound of her footsteps coming up the back stairs and which cup she preferred in the morning, and the way she looked at the crooked painting in the hallway now, actually looked at it, which she hadn't done before. He told her he had spent the last several days looking for a version of this where she stayed safe and he didn't have to give anything up. "There isn't one," he said. She looked at him across the kitchen table, this man she had found bleeding in her grass who had eaten her rice and borrowed her books and watched her from the back room with that unreadable expression that she had spent 4 weeks learning to read. "No," she said. "There isn't." He made the calls that afternoon. She stayed in the kitchen. She had told him she would stay and she stayed, not because she needed to supervise but because he had asked and she had said yes, and that was enough of a reason. She heard his voice, low and controlled, and she heard the careful rhythm of it. The measured words, the pauses, the weight of things being put down in exchange for other things. She made tea and she drank it and she listened to the shape of what he was doing without understanding most of it. The calls took 2 hours. When he put the phone on the table he was quiet for a moment, looking at his hands the way you look at your hands when you have used them to do something you can't take back. Then he looked at her. "It's enough," he said. "For now. It won't hold forever. But right now it holds." She got up and put the kettle on. She made 2 cups of tea because the coffee was gone. She sat in front of him and sat back down across from him, and he picked up the cup and they were quiet for a while, the good kind of quiet, the kind that doesn't need to be filled. He did not thank her. She did not need him to. Some things don't need to be said because they have been said in other ways, in the accumulation of 4 weeks of small choices, and saying them out loud would make them smaller, not larger. She drank her tea. He drank his. The kitchen was warm. It was late when they went outside. Dark and cold, and the kind of November night that smells like wood smoke from somewhere and the particular bite of a season turning. It wasn't planned. She had been sitting at the kitchen table after dinner, turning the Lighthouse novel over in her hands without opening it, and at some point she got up and put her jacket on and went to the back door. She held it open. He followed her without being asked, which she noticed and which she did not comment on. They stood in the backyard in the cold air and looked at the fence and the dark beyond it and the square of orange light from the neighbor's window that fell across the wet grass the same way it had 4 weeks ago. She stood where she had knelt down that first night. She hadn't meant to end up in exactly that spot. She just did. "I've been thinking about what you said," King said. "Not about the faction, not about the calls. About control." She waited. "I've built things my whole life," he said, looking at the fence. "Structures. Systems. Things that were supposed to last and protect what was inside them. I've been very good at it." Pause. "None of it has lasted. Not the way I thought it would when I was building it." She looked at the same fence he was looking at, the one he had cleared on a night she hadn't known he existed yet. "I've done the same thing," she said. "I call them walls instead of buildings, but it's the same idea. Keep enough distance between yourself and anything that could hurt you, make the space small enough to manage, and nothing gets close enough to do real damage." She pushed her hands into her jacket pockets. "Works pretty well. Right up until someone falls into your backyard." He turned to look at her. She could see his face in the low light from the neighbor's window. The line of his jaw. The particular way he looked at her, which she had spent weeks learning and still didn't have a word for. "Are you going to keep the wall up?" he said. She looked at him. She thought about the first night. About the glass of water she had reached for without deciding to, and the blanket, and the 12 evenings of changing bandages, and the conversation about the crooked painting, and the cup of coffee outside a closed door every morning for 3 weeks. She thought about all the things she had done without deciding to, and how each one had felt less like a choice she was making and more like something that had already been decided by a part of her she didn't entirely consult. She stepped toward him. Not far. Not a declaration. Just closer. Enough that the space between them was a different kind of space than it had been a moment ago, with a different quality of air. She didn't say yes. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. The city made its low sound around them. The city never went fully quiet, not this part of it, not at this hour. The fence stood where it had always stood. The grass was wet under their feet. The light from next door lay across the yard the same as always, the same warm rectangle she had been stepping over for 2 years without thinking about it. She wasn't sorry for any of it. She had built a life designed to be small enough not to break. Small enough that when things went wrong, as things always went wrong, the damage would be contained. She had done this carefully and well, and it had worked, in the way that a thing works when working means nothing gets in and nothing gets out. And then she had knelt down in the wet grass beside a stranger who was bleeding into her backyard, and she had pressed his hand over his own wound, and she had said keep the pressure on, and something had started that she could not have stopped if she had tried. She was not sorry. The backyard that had been the only place that was entirely hers was a little less hers now. There was someone else standing in it. There was someone else who knew its corners and its light and which patch of grass was always wet and which board of the fence was loose. She stood there in the cold with her hands in her jacket pockets, and she was closer to someone than she had let herself be in a very long time, and the wall was not exactly down. But she had stepped away from it. And that was enough for tonight. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe.